So now we're going to look at the decision of job training decisions. All right, the decisions of whether or not to get more job training. So a couple things to note, and this training can be in the form of college, on-the-job training, so forth. So there's a couple characteristics to note about this. And the first is that more education equals more earnings. And so if we look here, you can see the college graduates, their earnings per year by age group. So the older you get, you're going to see your pay go up more rapidly the higher your level of education. Whereas you see, your different levels of education and where you start at and where you finish at. And so you can see that there's greater benefits from higher education, from more education. Another note is that, however, this is also the case for women. So the previous was for males, this one is for females, and so it's the same. The second thing to note is the concavity of the earnings age profile. And what that means is that you get the most rapid increases in your pay early, and then it tends to fan out a little bit. And so what happens is early in your career, you're going to see higher increases, and then it slows down. Now, a lot of this has to do with on-the-job training. On-the-job training can either be done, learned by doing or seeing, or getting the formal training. But what tends to happen is people take more training early on in their career. And because of that, they are able to, they see higher levels of returns from that. Now, the next note is the age earning profile fans out. So like I said, you get a rapid increase early, and then it kind of fans out. As you get older, the differences become more pronounced, and for the most part, people get more they get more interaction with higher learning early on in the career, more training, and so there's a wide gap early, but then it kind of evens out a little bit later on. Finally, the age earnings profile, that link between your age and your earnings level, tends to be more concave and more so for women. And so what I mean is this shows that share of men versus women. So these are the labor force participation rates, part-time employment status, and hours worked by gender. And so what you can see is that the labor force participation rate is higher for males as in addition to the full-time, but males also tend to be work more in the higher you see more men in management, but also by specialty support. So the participation rate for the males is higher for all. But as you can see here, women have different attitudes on training based on their pre-work training. So these are for women, through their earnings per year, and you can see that the returns from schooling have changed as more women have entered the labor force. Have entered schooling and then the labor force. And so between 1977 and 2011, there wasn't much of a difference between the growth of high school, or the growth of wage based on being a high school graduate. But being a college graduate in 2011 has much more benefit than in 1977. And so that's pulling more people in general into the workforce and to school, but women especially. And this shows, again, that more women are getting degrees. So this is percentage of women by degree, and you can see that pretty much across the board, there's more women getting the degrees. And again, because the benefits of doing so are becoming greater and greater. So is education a good investment? We showed already that those who are college graduates make more money than those who are not. Okay, so that's been well documented, well displayed. And the benefit of doing so, because of that benefit, the net benefits because of that wage increase because of schooling, it makes it worth it. But why is it worth it? Does schooling fully prepare you, make you so much better of a worker that you can come into a firm and be more productive? Probably not. Now, schooling gives you a good overview. It gives you a lot of good critical thinking. But a lot of majors are more geared towards general. They give you a lot of general skills, whereas a lot of businesses, they have a specific set of tasks that they need to get done. And if there was a major for every task, no one would know what to do. So it doesn't fully prepare you for it. So what is education then? Why are firms willing to pay so much more to people who have a college degree than people who don't? The reason why is this idea of signals. So a signal is something that you do that gives information about, or gives it gives information to an employer about what kind of a worker you are, what kind of a person you are. Okay? And so, for example, if you go into a job interview and you're wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and the t-shirt's ripped, and you're going into an accounting firm with that, okay, the employer is going to look at that and say, this person's not a good worker. They're lazy. They don't care. Well, maybe that's the furthest thing from the truth. But what happened was, by the way you dress, you sent a signal about yourself. Now, these signals, the number one signal that is used for people just coming out of college or the number one signal for people who are younger is their education. So education is used as a signal. Now, the employer doesn't know how good of a worker you are. They don't know how productive you will be. But they can see you went to school. And they can see that, on average, people who went to school tend to be more driven, tend to be of higher ability. Now, is that true for everybody? Absolutely not, and I'm not trying to imply that. People may not go to school for a lot of reasons. They may not go to college for a lot of reasons. And it may have nothing to do with their ability. But this is just talking about the averages, because this is all that firms can do. They can talk to you, they can look at your resume, but what are they going to, how do they know for sure? So they're just using estimates. They're making a guess about you because it's cheaper of doing that than going out and doing a extensive search of everybody, following them around and having them do a bunch of tests. It's cheaper to rely on these signals. So there are some factors that are correlated with high productivity: age, experience, and education. The older you are, the more experience you have, and the higher education, you tend to be a higher quality worker. You tend to be a more productive worker. But is that the case? So does more education really make you a better worker? Well, if we look here, the United States, and this is just a comparison of some schooling, they spend a lot of money on education. But the test scores, however, and these are the math and science test scores of 15-year-olds, aren't quite there. So just because people go to school doesn't mean they're higher ability. But what employers take that of is the idea of, okay, they went to school, they must be driven, they must know what they're doing. Now, it's not, again, not always the case, but that's the general belief. Now, if we look at an example here, let's say there are two wage offers, wage 1 and wage 2. And so a firm, they have 2 spots to fill. Okay? And they say, look, we'll pay wage 2 for this, we'll pay wage 2 for the higher quality person and wage 1 for the lower quality person, lower productive person. Well, what are they going to base it on? Do they know, talking for somebody, just how productive they are? No. So what happens is there tends to be some years of education before high school, where if a person goes beyond that, they're assumed that they have some kind of drive or some kind of ability. And so that E star is viewed as a signal. Whereas if that worker is above that, they're assumed to be in the higher productivity class. Where if workers did not go that far, they're considered to be lower and get the lower wage. And so this shows the signal. Where you get to this E star, if you're over that, it's going to be viewed as a signal that you're a better worker, and so you get the higher wage. If you're below it, you get the lower wage. Now, this is not a perfect indicator by any means. Some people choose schooling because they have the money, whereas they don't. And so, if you look at the cost of less productive workers, education, you look at the costs and benefits in here, it's all about the net present benefits. And so with this, more productive people can actually spend less on schooling because they're more productive, they don't need to go as long, so their costs are going to be lower. Whereas less productive people maybe need to do more. And so it's not always a perfect indicator. And this just shows what happens if more people are having schooling. What's going to happen is that you may have it so that you need to go through and raise that level, raise that minimum education level. But that's just how education is looked at as a signal and is used to determine at least some initial indicator as an indicator of productivity.